I think it was Botvinnik who said every serious chess player should return to the games of Morphy. So I never really left them, but I thought it would be a good idea for me to do a series of some of my favourite Morphy games, and in order to be a little bit more analytical than my own playing, because I've become a bit slovenly and inaccurate. So I'm going to look at this game. It was the U.S.A. Congress, and it was Morphy against Thompson, and there's one particular move in this game which is absolutely beautiful, and I haven't really I haven't prepared this. I'm just doing this off the cuff really, so I don't want to give too much away, but it's an explosive move, and it reminds us of one of the old chess idioms that an attack on a wing is best countered by a counter-attack in the centre. So let's get on with the game. It's a very interesting game. It's a little bit inaccurate at the end. The last few finishing blows were a little bit inaccurate by Morphy, but we'll carry on. Without an engine at first, I'll add the engine later. Okay, so just standard opening. For anyone who's new to chess, I'll try and give you a little kind of what can I say? An introduction to the basics of what the two players are doing. So this poor move, attacking, well, trying to fight for control over d5, perhaps to stop black putting a pawn there immediately, and obviously it frees the bishop and now the queen. The queen is free, and this pawn occupies the e4 square. Okay, Morphy achieves the same. This pawn occupies the e5 square. He could be putting pressure on d5 or f4, sorry, d4 or f4, and this bishop is free to come to good fighting squares where it could be provoking or having good luck, keeping scope, I suppose, on f2, and also the queen is now free to come in. And so with one pawn move by each side, they've achieved quite a lot strategically. So Thompson continues classically, knight to f3, puts pressure on this e5 pawn, and Morphy defends. And so if we go back to Nimzovician ideas, at this point both pawns are unprotected but unattacked. Now that pawn, the e5, is attacked, now it's defended, but Nimzovic would still say it's still unprotected. I think he would. I might be misquoting him, because he came up with the theory of overprotection. So we'll carry on with Morphy's moves, sorry. And now again, in these days they like to get straight into the action. So this bishop is now well looking at f7. It's got scope on f7, and there's possibilities of moves like this, knight to there, and have them both ganging up on that pawn. Morphy plays the same kind of classical style. The bishop's looking at f2. We'll carry on a few moves. Slightly passive move, I suppose you could say, but it allows the bishop, the c1 bishop, out to come to a good fighting square. Both players are trying to get their pieces out as fast as they can in order to get castled. So they're both fighting for the main strategy of occupation of the centre, development, and then to open lines. Knight to f6, good development move. It's keeping an eye on the d5 square. Perhaps later on he's going to try and get a d5 pawn in. And he could have castled here. As I say, I'm not going to put the engine on yet, but white could have castled. That would have been a pretty good move to play. He might have ideas now of bishop to g5, pinning the knight in tandem with the knight coming to d5. And if you were to have both of those pieces attacking the f6 knight, it could be awkward for black's queen here. So these, I've often been on the receiving end of those kind of double attacks. You've got to be very wary of that. So Morphy tries to inhibit that, I suppose. We're always warned, and I hear ringing in my ears Alechian saying never move the pawns in front of your king. But I think Morphy's probably got a long-term idea of why this fits in. I usually play this with the idea of castling long, but that doesn't always work, because you end up with a pawn storm of these pawns sometimes coming up, and you end up with lines being open and the queen comes down here. So castling queenside isn't always good. So after that move, this is a rather strange move, and this could be sealing his fate early and giving Morphy too free a hand. Usually you want to be developing all your pieces. For the people new to the game, one of the axioms or idioms in chess again is to say never move the same piece twice in an opening. Now that rule is often, it's a rule of thumb, it's often broken and not adhered to, but sometimes it can come back with a sting in the tail. So here he could have just castled here simply. Perhaps he didn't want to, because maybe you get d6 and then maybe a bishop to g4, but I'm not sure. For some reason he's played the knight there, and maybe wants to bring the knight round to g3 to bring it round to here. But there could be a loss of tempo. Okay, so d6, developing, freeing the bishop, and then again this could be another loss of tempo. Well, we see now why the knight was moved, because he's thinking systematically. He's freed the knight so he could move the pawn. As I say, I'm kind of doing this off the cuff. He can move the pawn to c3, and perhaps he wants to bring his knight there behind the bishop, and they'll both be attacking the f7 pawn then. So, and also he wants to have more control over d4, so for d4 push. Okay, so black just carries on regardless and gets his king castled. Now another use of a tempo. I don't want to say waste, but it's a use of a tempo. Basically, I think it's here to inhibit the bishop coming. He doesn't want this bishop coming down there. It could also be to involve this, but that looks a bit too early for doing that, unless he's going to be castling on the other side. So what would Morphy do for this? Well, I think he's feeling that an attack's already ready. He needs to get things prepared, and one thing he'd need to do is to open this file, or push this pawn, opening this file, and then can you see the scope that he'd have with the combined effort of the, let me see if this works. He has the rook and the bishop there, for example. If he manages to eliminate the f pawn. Okay, so now that suggests why he plays this move. He took his king away. He wants to open the f file. And now Morphy, again, instead of castling, he's insistent on this plan. He wants to bring this knight round. Does it want to come to f5? And let's see what happens now. Yes, he's tucking the knight away because he wants to move that f pawn. And now the queen. I think Morphy, Thompson perhaps is setting up a trap. I've seen this game before, and I think he's setting up a nifty little trap, which is quite hard to spot. In fact, I'm going to put the engine on. It might affect the recording. I've been having some problems with the recording. So after engine, I mean, this will shows my analysis so far to be a bit. It's always the case when you know someone's won and you're on their side, or you know, same as when you're playing a game of chess. You might obscure the truth by liking your own position too much. I like Morphy's position, so up until this point, computer gives him an advantage. Now here, he's saying white's got an advantage, but we'll just play through. Queen to there. Now we're going for the opening of the position, which Morphy loves to open a position and have open files. So could have played knight takes. He takes pawn takes. Now can you see there's going to be some? There could be some nice little move with e5 trapping. If this pawn is ever pushed to e5, it could be trapping the or attacking the bishop. I'm just trying to remember from years ago what actually happens here. So, oh yeah, the trap is. Let me see what the trap is. I'll try and remember what the trap is. So d5 is the nice move. That's a very textbook modern way to play with this, because a lot of us might just play automatically to take. You swap. You have a piece. A pawn's taken, and you recapture. And I think it's is it Smirnoff? There's a guy on YouTube who says to take is a mistake. That's one of the rules you should learn. So you have a pawn captured, and then it's just very normal in chess, especially fast chess. You just recapture automatically, and it looks on the surface that looks okay, because after, if bishop takes, knight takes, and rook takes. But yes, this would be a bad move, because you'd get this. Attacking the rook. So that would be the little sting in the tail, and then white's best moves would be this. Rook comes back up. So this is what I was. I suppose optically, anyway, by the action, but Morphy sees, maybe I'm just a simple pawn move, but I think that deserves high praise for this move. Well, for here, from seeing it from here, and we get to d5, and not only is it a nice move, but it just puts a stop to all of white's plans. It just says, I knew what you were trying to do, your cheap little chess moves, and they're not going to work. So now, even now, we don't take the pawn. Morphy doesn't take the pawn. The computer thinks it should, but maybe Morphy's seen this isn't a very strong computer, which fits 11. So now Fitz sees it. e4. Okay, so this is exactly what Morphy likes. This is why these games are so instructive for beginners and players of all levels, because he conducts the game so well. He develops his pieces well, he castles, then he tries to open up lines. So now, pawn takes again. That's offering for it to be taken. He doesn't fancy that, because if you look at the king, potentially when this pawn's gone, there's a potential for black to put a rook on that file, and whichever piece is between the king and the rook will be pinned. Okay, so here we go. If queen were to take it, queen takes. It wouldn't be a straightforward win, but maybe white couldn't calculate well enough, and he didn't like the look of it, because there would follow but that's still pinned, but it's supported by this pawn. Then after knight attacks the queen. Queen gets the hell out of the way. Well, no, she's still. You're going to get bishop takes. Have to gang up somehow. This pawn to d. I think he just thinks at this point, let's just get there. So he plays knight 2, because when you're analysing it, but now you can see what I predicted. We can see the bishop is attacking that in tandem with this rook, and the rook, if the rook were to take, there's an attack on that queen as well. But this is just hypothetical. So let's see what happens now. Okay, so the computer likes bishop taking the pawn, but Morphy's always looking for activity, so he moves his knight there. And why move the knight there? Well, this pawn now is creating a pedestal for possibly the knight to come here and give check. So that's something always to look for. When a pawn has moved, often a pawn will be moved to open up lines or also to vacate squares. So that's kind of not in this instance, but it's created a pedestal there. Okay, we'll carry on. Now it's difficult to give advice really now, but he probably plays one of the worst moves. It looks like a good move on the surface. Now if you just look at things, for example, this knight looks quite strangely placed. If this pawn has to disappear to when there's an exchange here, that knight will be unsupported. If the queen is down here, that knight will be pinned. So there's something a little bit mysterious going on, and Morphy doesn't take straight away. I'm a very reactive player, and I'd probably just snap that off straight away, but Morphy gives check first of all. There's a beauty, there really is an aesthetic beauty in the way he plays, and nobody's going to want to play this move. Computer move is queen takes. That is objectively the best move, apparently, according to the computer. And then to take the bishop. But you're going to be very reluctant to play that in a real game. So you can't even see how bad it is necessarily. And at this point, I mean, he's in check. He's got to move somewhere. Moves to e2, and now we see, now he takes the bishop, because I suppose he wanted to get that check in first. I don't know what the difference is if you take bishop. Let's have a quick look. If you take bishop straight away, there's a laziness. I have an inherent laziness thinking I'm not going to be bothered looking at that because it's not so good. But often you look at things and then you do learn something from looking at it and not being lazy. So if he takes, now you can give a check. Maybe the queen, I don't know why that's better for, I don't know why it's better for white. Possibly because this knight is not pinned, but what can we do after that? Take this knight at 1. Yeah, I'm not really sure why that's a variation. So anyway, he gives check. Now he takes, snaps off. Now the queen comes down to a nice position. Might do if remember anything. Okay, so now at this point, yeah, this is a nice move, but I think again computer likes just taking the rook to pose. Morphy wanted to do something, but just a little bit stunning or spectacular. So instead of just playing rook, I mean, why wouldn't he want to play that? I can't see any downside to that. King can go to d2, and you can give check again. I can't see anything down to that, but maybe he thought he saw a faster win because he plays here now. Plays bishop takes, and it's quite nice. I suppose it's a sack, isn't it? It's a line clearance sack, because if the queen were to take it, let's see what happens if the queen takes. The queen's not going to take that. The queen isn't going to take it, because now it'll just be rook to there. But if instead the queen doesn't take, black tries to come back with another. Well, it's quite a stunning move that as well. And what are we going to do now? What do we do? He gives check there. Now that is quite sweet. Maybe he saw it looks sweet, but it's not objectively the best move. Oh, chess computers have ruined the pedagogy, if that's the right word, the historical significance of chess games. So it looks like a beautiful move, and then he resigned there. But a better move would have just been bishop to e4, and then if bishop takes, rook to f1. And that was probably the same idea with the bishop g4 move. Because if he takes, yeah, h takes, then 1. But he didn't get that far. So there's always a lot we can learn from a Morphy. We'll have a quick recap through it. Okay. Both sides getting there. Now he goes of wanted a d4 square, which you got him credit for. It's nice, and it's a sophisticated idea, I think, but it's just used correctly. Waste of tempo, gives Morphy a chance to get pieces developed. Opens up lines, smooth. Opening up the sentence, but asking questions of his opponent, and his opponent always find the right answers. If they're not finding others, it can stress you out, and you make errors. So again, instead of just recapturing a pawn, he thinks, what does he want to do? He wants to use that d5. Even if that pawn were snatched up now, because he's got the pressure of the queen on that square as well, he owns it at the moment. So anyway, so he plants that in, check. So for me, the significant points of that game were the moving the knight around the board too much, wasting tempos, and Morphy seeing that nice d5. I think one of the reasons I quite like that move is because once I've moved the pawn, very often I've moved the pawn, and it's quite early in the game. It's part of you kind of thinks, oh no, as that rule I said, you don't move the same piece twice. You don't want to move a pawn 2 squares in 2 moves, when just in 1 move originally. So you're kind of reluctant to do that, but he just saw what needed to be done and he did it. Okay, well, thank you very much for watching and listening. That was my first attempt at, well, really, since I did one about 5 or 6 years ago, but that's my first attempt again at the analysis of a Morphy game. So I hope to do more in the future. Okay.